From Wana Brands, welcome to Enhance Your Life. I'm your host, Jonathan Small, and each week I talk to people from all sorts of professions and backgrounds about how cannabis has enhanced their lives and how this healing plant can enrich your life too. Hey everybody, welcome to the Enhance Your Life podcast. My name is Jonathan Small, and we have a great show for you. My guest is Danny Murr-Sloat, who is the owner of AlpinStash, a craft cannabis cultivation company in Colorado. His in-house cultivars are basically cult classics, and he's built quite a name for himself in the industry. But what's really fascinating about Danny is how he got here. In 2003, when he was just 21 years old, he woke up with an excruciating stomach pain that landed him in the hospital for 4 days. He was eventually diagnosed with something called thoracic outlet syndrome. What happened for the next 7 years was basically hell. Danny was prescribed all sorts of medications, 19 in all. And he gained 70 pounds and was basically lethargic. But then Danny found cannabis, and it not only changed his life, but it changed his livelihood. So here's his incredible story. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me.
So you have quite a story. If you wouldn't mind taking us back, I think you said it was 2003, and you faced some real difficult medical challenges. Can you tell us a little bit about what happened to you?
Yeah, definitely. So shortly after I turned 21, I woke up just sort of randomly one night with really terrible stomach pains and cramps, and went to the ER, was admitted to the hospital for 4 or 5 days, and given pain medications and a bunch of testing, and everything they did was inconclusive. And once that initial spike in pain kind of had come down and they felt comfortable, they released me. I was still having pain, so they released me with a script for Vicodin and directions to follow up with my gastroenterologist, which I did, and I received more testing from them. And over the course of the next few months, the only ongoing treatment I had was pain medication. Once they figured that they couldn't really do anything, they referred me to a physiatrist, so a pain doctor, to see if they could do anything. And at that point, I'd say it'd probably been about 7 or 8 months later of consistent, pain medication prescriptions and testing. When I saw the physiatrist that first appointment, I asked how my pain was. I said, well, it's still there. It's still a problem. And he said, well, we can be a little bit more aggressive on the pain treatment, and prescribe me fentanyl. So this was before the opiate crisis was a thing, and before, fentanyl now is known, but, it really wasn't back then. So I left that appointment with a prescription for instant release fentanyl and time released fentanyl as well. Over the next few years, I really got into a pretty big, funk medically and certainly emotionally, as I just kind of further went down this dark rabbit hole of, doctors, testing, various treatment modalities. I definitely was doing a slew of, things like physical therapy and massage therapy, but I was also getting epidural cortisone injections, nerve ablations.
Jeez.
And just a regimen of, pain medication. And after a few years of that, especially on, something like fentanyl, I began to have side effects. And so I got more medication for the side effects, and then medication for the side effects of that medication. And, pretty soon it kind of spiraled out of control.
So for those who've never tried fentanyl, tell me what the experience was when you were on more than fentanyl, you were on all these different pain meds, but what was the experience? Did they make you feel good for temporarily, or did you never like the way you felt?
Yeah. So, it's interesting because at that point I had been on Vicodin long enough that when I switched over to fentanyl, there was, it was much stronger, and you definitely do get, a bit of a euphoric hit initially, but, once you take these for a little while, that fades pretty quickly. And the main thing that I was, seeking it for and using it for was pain relief. So the interesting thing about all that is that, opiates they don't make the pain go away. They just sort of make you disassociate and not care as much. And if you're on them for chronic pain, the classic thing is you take it for a little while, it helps. Your body gets, used to that dose or that type, and then, you just keep having to up that dose and just, to try to get some relief from that pain. It was weird because I had been on it long enough that I didn't really notice a huge difference with either, any sort of positive feelings, but B, any sort of pain relief feelings.
Hmm.
And then, of course, you go see the doctor, and the doctor's answer is, well, we can try this therapy, let's try another round of injections. But, in the meantime, here's more of it. And it's really like a lobster in a pot of boiling water, where it's like, it's a slow ramp up, just sort of descending into that whole thing. It's a slow enough ramp up that you don't really notice, effects or, more importantly, issues, and really until you begin to come out of it. As my life began to sort of degrade, and, I spent most of my time either going to doctors or, in bed, it really like didn't seem that it was, A, such a big deal, but also B, like, that I was in as deep a funk as I was. And, I began to develop other issues. I developed a nerve impingement problem in my neck that affected my arm, and I lost 30% of the nerve in my arm at that time. And, in retrospect, I believe that was due actually to the usage of such potent opiates, because, I was sleeping so hard and so long. I mean, now I know that, fentanyl is one of the things that they give you to knock you out before surgery. So
Yeah.
if you're taking that in a sustained period of time, I mean, it was like almost coma-like sleep. And, I feel like over time, it just sort of compressed the area of my neck. So, I required some surgeries for that. And then I
Wow.
developed, towards the end of all this, I developed a non-cancerous base of skull tumor, which had a pretty, decent surgery to take care of that.
Oh my God. I'm so sorry to hear about all these things. So at this point, at what point were you like, this is enough? I can't keep going down this rabbit hole of these opiates and different medications that these doctors are prescribing. I've got to maybe treat myself in a more sort of natural way.
So, I mean, I definitely was really, sick, and I would even say like broken of this whole thing.
Hmm.
After a few years, everything around me had just degraded, and the more you become physically inactive, the more, other aspects of your life that you once enjoyed, kind of fall apart. But I really felt like I had, no way that I could see getting out of that, because while I didn't want to be on all the medication, I also didn't want to be in pain. And, trying to figure out how to get out of there, out of that pain state without using medication, I just didn't really see that happening. It was actually my dad who, yeah, in 2009, after cannabis was more widely available medically, he came to me and he said, you should really try this. And I actually had experiences with cannabis in high school for sure, but then after that, and especially during these medicated years, I really didn't have any experiences, and the few that I did were kind of negative. So I was a little bit resistant to using cannabis, but out of kind of like a desperation, I gave it a shot, and it very quickly, it was super effective and very quickly turned things around for me.
What was it about it that was negative for you that had given you some pause before you tried it again?
I had definitely had some experiences with paranoia, and then the last time that I had ingested previous to this, I had some nausea and vomiting, and but really, I feel like opiates are such a when you're in it, it's turns you so much into like almost like a zombie. Everything about your life sort of stops. All you do, or all I did, was sit there and consume. Whether that was television or food or sweets.
And you gained a lot of weight during this time, right?
Oh yeah. I gained about 70
Wow.
pounds. Yeah, I mean, I was always a skinny kid, fairly active. Enjoyed a kind of Colorado lifestyle of mountains and camping and rock climbing and those things, and all of that, ceased. I mean, I literally I was either in bed in a computer chair playing games or at a doctor's appointment, for years. I mean, there's like pretty much
Did you
nothing
even
else I
were
did.
you working?
No, I wasn't. I was living with my parents. I mean,
Wow.
I had some jobs, in that time period, but towards the end, everything just stopped. And, really, you became so sedentary. And, after I got out of all of this, I later came to kind of understand that, the less you do physically, the more that your body starts to just physically, fall apart anyways. So, some of the problems that I had, aches and pains and things that I was taking medicine for, were caused by, just not doing anything
Hmm.
and becoming stagnant. And the other thing that I learned is that the interesting thing about opiates is if you use them for chronic pain, especially like chronic muscle pain, for an extended period of time, your body actually begins to devote more nerve pathways to pain. So it's a pretty vicious cycle of, I'm in pain, I take medications to stop that pain. Your body says, hey, we're trying to get this signal through, you're not caring. So then you take more opiates, and then the signal strengthens, and it's a really bad downward spiral. So, as I got off medication and, became active again, and the majority of that was thanks to cannabis.
So initially, your father had recommended that you take cannabis. What form were you taking it in?
I started smoking, and then as the vaporization technology became a little bit better, I tried that, and I definitely played around with edibles as well. But for the most part, and initially, it was smoking.
And what did you notice right away that was different than the experience of opiates?
Yeah. So first of all, it definitely helped improve my pain physically, which was, to say that was a big deal is an
Hmm.
understatement, especially because I've been taking all these medications that more or less masked the pain instead of, actually made it feel better. They just made me disassociate. But the other thing that cannabis really did is it allowed me, to sort of dive in a healthy way into whatever I was doing and escape the mental stagnation that I had been in. So whether that was going out hiking or a walk, I guess even initially was just being outside, or watching anime or playing video games, or whatever it is that I found that brought me, that can suck me in and bring me some joy. Cannabis increased that, and really allowed me to get out of that headspace of my life is I'm in pain and I'm depressed and I'm on these medications. It really gave me, emotional and mental breathing room that was, everything.
Yeah, that's amazing. When did you start seeing the benefit? When you started losing weight, right? Almost immediately.
So yeah, after I began to take, to ingest, I would say probably within, a couple of weeks, I had enough experiences of it relieves my pain. It uplifts me.
And the
And
paranoia wasn't there as much anymore.
the paranoia wasn't there as much. And I really, I attribute my earlier experiences with paranoia to a few things. The dare mindset that I had growing up of, this is a drug, this is bad, which is ironic because I was on all these terrible drugs.
Hmm.
And then the classic thing of, oh, people know I'm high, and are they coming to get me?
Hmm.
Those sort of things that disappeared when I was taking it medicinally, but also I guess for a purpose, that I realized pretty quickly, like, this is actually healing me as opposed to bringing me down. And I also was better prepared to distract myself if I started feeling paranoid or have any anxious feelings. It's like, okay, let's watch some more anime, and like, I can focus in on that and kind of come to another, like, a happy spot. So once I felt relief, physically and emotionally and mentally, I started getting myself off these medications. As I got off the pain medication, I didn't need things to help me wake me up, and I didn't I stopped taking the GABA receptor blockers like Neurontin. And so once I started doing that and becoming active, just being physically active again, I started to lose weight. I mean, my body has always been a certain type. I've always been within a similar weight range, and my body just came back to normal. And so the way that growing tied into all this for me is that with my first purchase back in 2009, I received some clones, and I'd always found gardening therapeutic. And so I took care of these plants. And then once I realized, how beneficial this was for me, I thought, well, I'm actually going to put effort into this, and if it worked so well for me, and I was resistant to it, like this is super legit, and maybe if I, try to devote myself to this, I can eventually have a career. And so I became, very driven, and a large part of what got me up and out of bed and away from the TV was the act of gardening, growing. Yeah, absolutely. And the idea that I can do something that's beneficial to me, and maybe I can give myself a skill set, and and a hope for like a career path, or even just like a professional future, doing something that's so therapeutic and that I love. It was just so inspiring, and something to focus on and look forward to, that it really was as therapeutic, if not more so, in the general long-term arc of my life, as as ingesting cannabis was.
What did you learn about growing early on that really surprised you and made you love it even more than just the amateur kind of grower, like you wanted to make it your life and your career?
Yeah, well, one of the things that grabbed me right away is that this is hard, and there's an artisanal aspect of this that I can see, and that's always been something that's driven me, is that craft or artisanal aspect of things. So it's here too. It's in growing, and let me see how deep this rabbit hole goes, and like how good I can, how much I can learn, how good I can get my skills, and like how good can I produce cannabis. And the other thing that really jumped out at me was the aspect of breeding, creating my own genetics, my own cultivars, and like, where would that lead?
Was anybody teaching you? You're completely self-taught at this point.
I was, I read a couple of books, and, saw, read articles in magazines that were, very, narrow in what they covered, and lacked details. And so it was for the most part self-taught, which equates to trial and error, and a lot of errors.
Yeah. What were some of the early errors that you made?
Oh, I did, everything from, it's actually funny because this is one of the ways I lost a lot of weight, but, having intense lights in a small space without air conditioning. So the temperatures were, 100 degrees that I was working in, and just, sweating my ass off. I mean, I feel like I made every mistake in the book. I mean, my first attempt to flower failed miserably. My first actual harvest was all seeded. And, I mean, the mistakes, I mean, I did everything wrong.
Yeah, everything wrong. But you learned from your mistakes. So when did you decide to go from growing it for yourself to actually growing it for other people? Like, who were you growing it for initially?
Yeah. So, I mean, initially it was for myself. I was, back then, I was a caregiver for my mom, and, a family friend. And so, that was still just a few plants, but I got my first industry job in the summer of 2010, working at a dispensary for a few days. And then they switched me over to their grow that was, at that point was in the owner's living room as they were transitioning into a warehouse. So I kind of helped, get that company, or that part of that company up and going. And then, it turned out to be a pretty negative experience, just all around, as a number of these jobs were back at that time. And so after, a couple months of working in that warehouse as a grower, I actually quit and decided to go take horticulture classes. And it was the type of job where it was like a really old family friend. It was something that I should have had a positive experience for and with. And so I thought, if this is, supposedly a good job, and if I'm having all these issues, and I can see, and I'm hearing from friends that they're having similar issues, this might be, in order to grow the way that I want and to do the things that I want to do, like this might be something that I have to do for myself. This might be a business I have to start. So I, began to take horticulture classes, and then got a job working in a grow store, so I could learn, like, the equipment and nutrient aspect of the industry, and just sort of went from there.
Yeah. And then when did you start your actual own company?
So I began to lay the groundworks at that time in 2011, 2012. I quit my my grow store job in 2012. Worked at another licensed facility that was another family friend, and had another terrible experience. and began to work on it full time at that point. So right in the end of 2012, I began to work on it, full time, and then we got licensed at the end of 2014 and had our plants began growing in 2015.
And so this company is called
It's AlpinStash.
AlpinStash. And tell us exactly what you do at AlpinStash.
Yeah, so my wife and I own it. We have 2 full-time employees and 1 part-time employee, and everything we do is devoted to craft cannabis. So, we use natural and sustainable nutrients. We, make our soil by hand. We water by hand. We hand trim. We glass cure, and we do a lot of on-site breeding. So, craft is our main focus, and it's what we're dedicated to.
What does craft mean? I just find that as opposed to sort of whatever isn't craft. Like I know what craft beer is, but talk to us about what craft cannabis is.
Yeah, so I mean, it's very similar. Everything you do with purpose and intention, and in the way in a way in which the end product will be, the best that it can be for you to offer to the market. So that would be, best terpene profile, best flavors, unique terpene profile and flavors. The smoothest smoking experience you can. That's one of those things that taking the time to cure in glass, really enhances the product and the experience. So, to me, I guess that craft means, doing something with dedication, passion, knowledge, and education to the best of your ability, and often, using things, your modalities are by hand, and everything you do is with the intention that your end product is going to be the best that you can possibly offer. And really, it's a labor of love, and we put that into our plants.
Now, how do you test it out? Are you and your wife trying your product out yourself? I mean, it probably sounds like a lot of fun for people who, love cannabis, that you get to sort of like, is it like, but I could also imagine you don't want to smoke too much. So how do you try out to make sure it's smooth and to make sure you hit all these benchmarks that you want to hit with your different strains?
Yeah, so at this point, we've kind of dialed in the things that make it smooth. So, that's these days, that's, especially when we're testing out new genetics, it's more of the, we definitely do quality control to make sure that it stays smooth, but it's more of, the flavor and smell and quality of the high. But there is for sure the misconception that, we're like craft brewers. We can take sips every now and then of our product to make sure that it's good along the way. Is actually, in the regulated cannabis market in Colorado, it's very difficult to take product home. And for the longest time, the only way to do that was actually to do a buyback from a store. So we would sell a store, product before we were ready to release it to the general public, and then we'd have to go back and purchase that for ourselves to try it. And these days, I smoke, a little bit, here and there. My wife has definitely. We recently, well, I guess not recently more, but we had a kid, about 1.5 years ago, and so she just started smoking again, and she's an excellent tester. And we do get product to try. She's really good at tracking that. But the process is we find a store that we're partners with, and we sell them a little bit, and
Right.
and then we go back and buy it, and then we go home and try it. Our
Yeah.
employees get to try it. We kind of all come together. But during the whole growing process, there's a lot of things that we can tell. What does it smell like? What are its growth traits? Is this something that we enjoy growing? Does it have the structure and color that we like? Is it hardy enough? Is it exotic enough? Is it unique enough? Those are all things that give us a big part of the picture before we actually, ingest it.
So such a great story. How are you feeling now? Like how is your pain? How are your, tell me about that.
Yeah, thank you for asking. So that side has improved dramatically. In the end, I was able to diagnose, I think, my stomach issues, which were a hyperactive immune system. I took, and it's so ironic to think about it, but I took Tagamet actually because Tagamet has some effect where it calms your immune system a little bit. And so once I was able to get that kind of out of control immune system that was, essentially inflaming muscles in my pelvic floor and my stomach, once I was able to get that settled down, kind of went away. It only took me, 7 or 8 years to find a doctor that could figure that out. And it's ironic because the Tagament's over the counter. And then once I got, the set of surgeries I had for the nerve problem in my neck, along with, becoming active again and being physical and moving my body and getting out of a depressed, mindset, not only did my pain vastly improve, but my nerve function came back to 100%. So I do still have some, residual issues with my arm, pain and things like that. But between staying active and things like massage, I'm able, and of course, cannabis, that sort of goes without saying, but I'm able to keep that, in check. And I feel I have a 15-month-old, so I'm tired, but physically
well,
I feel
that's natural. Yeah, I've been there.
yeah, I feel,
Been there twice.
better, in all aspects of my life than I ever have. And I have, cannabis to thank for that directly, but, through my journey and, what I've been doing, I've gained, almost everything I have today, through cannabis, my wife, many of my friends, my positive outlook, having this sense of purpose and, a business and, a future and things like that.
Oh, it's great. Well, it's a wonderful story with a happy ending, and hopefully it just gets happier.
Yeah, if I can just mention one other thing,
Of course.
one thing that, especially with all the chaos that's going on in the world today, that we at AlpinStash really encourage is people, if you have the ability to grow your own, that you try that. It's part of, since it was so healing for me, especially that's part of our sort of ethos as a company. And to that end, we have a very active social media presence, not only that talks about our business and our cultivars and genetics, but also, growing at home. And we have a, YouTube page where we have all of our tips and tricks. We don't think anything that we do is proprietary. We really want to share the joy of growing and the therapeutic values of growing, with everybody. So anybody that has the ability to, I encourage you to do that. If you can, if you need help, you can check out our YouTube. We're available if you want to reach out.
What's that URL so they can check out your YouTube?
Yeah, so our channel is AlpinStash. So if you just go on YouTube and search AlpinStash, our Instagram is at AlpinStash. That's AlpinStash. And our website's alpinstash.com. Feel free to reach out to us. We're here to help. We're here to spread the joy and the therapeutic value of cannabis and growing. And, there hasn't never been a better time, especially if you're stuck at home.
I'm thinking this is the perfect time with the pandemic. And, I know gardening is up across the board. So why not grow something that can make you feel better too?
Yeah, absolutely. And we want it to be successful. So, people that are listening to this, you're going to really see a push that we're doing, as a company to really try to continue to encourage people to try that at home, wherever they are. It's just so therapeutic. And our goal is to help you, as a home grower, like have a good experience and have it be successful. And, that's really important to us.
That's terrific. Well, thanks again for doing the call.
Yeah, thank you so much. It was a pleasure.
Enhance Your Life is brought to you by Wana, the #1 infused product in the U.S. Wana's entire process is designed to deliver the same great experience time after time. They have spent years fine-tuning their recipes so that their products are delicious, consistent, and potent. For more information, check out wanawellness.com. That's Wana, W-A-N-A, wellness.com.